Welcome to the Honeyed Leaf, where every cup of tea comes with a story. I'm so glad you're here. If you enjoy gentle mysteries that help you sleep, please subscribe so you never miss a visit to Willowbrook. Tonight, we're returning to the peaceful village, where Clara Whitmore is about to find herself drawn into another gentle mystery. Before we begin, find a comfortable position, close your eyes if you'd like, and let yourself relax. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. Just let the story carry you peacefully towards sleep. Now, let's visit Willowbrook together. Chapter 1. The Artist Arrives. Early November brought a different kind of beauty to Willowbrook. The brilliant colours of October had faded to muted golds and browns. The trees stood nearly bare, their branches creating delicate patterns against the grey sky. There was a quietness to the village now, a sense of settling in before winter's arrival. Clara stood at the window of the Honeyed Leaf, watching leaves skitter across the village green in the cool breeze. Inside, the shop was warm and inviting. She'd switched to her winter teas now, deeper, spicier blends to match the colder weather. The scent of cinnamon and cloves filled the air. The bell above the door chimed, and a woman Clara didn't recognise entered. She was perhaps in her early 40s, with paint-stained fingers and an artist's observant gaze. She carried a large portfolio and wore a colourful scarf that stood out against the grey November day. "Good morning," Clara greeted her warmly. "Welcome to the Honeyed Leaf." "Thank you. What a lovely shop." The woman looked around appreciatively, taking in the cosy atmosphere, the displays of tea tins, the comfortable chairs. "I'm Sarah Chen. I've just arrived in Willowbrook for a temporary residency." "An artist residency?" Clara asked, intrigued. "Yes. The village council has started a programme to bring artists here for short stays. I'm the first participant. I'll be here for 6 weeks, painting the village and surrounding countryside. They've given me use of the old gardener's cottage behind the church." "How wonderful! What kind of painting do you do?" "Landscapes, primarily. I'm particularly drawn to autumn and winter scenes. The way light changes during these seasons, the subtlety of colours. It's challenging but rewarding." Sarah settled at a table, and Clara brought her a pot of her autumn spice blend. "This smells amazing," Sarah said, inhaling the steam. "Thank you. It's one of my seasonal favourites. So you'll be painting Willowbrook?" "Yes, though I'm still getting my bearings. I arrived yesterday evening. I was wondering if you might recommend good painting locations. Views that capture the essence of the village?" Clara thought for a moment. "The view from the church hill is beautiful, especially at sunset. The old mill by the stream. Eleanor Hartwell's garden, even in late autumn it's lovely. She'd probably let you paint there if you asked. And the village green from various angles, of course." "The village green is what brought me here, actually," Sarah said. "I saw a photograph online taken during your autumn festival. Something about it captured my attention. The way the light fell, the sense of community. I wanted to experience that myself, to try to capture it in paint." "That's lovely. The festival was special this year. We revived an old tradition." Clara told Sarah briefly about finding Thomas Ashworth's records and the gratitude jar tradition. Sarah listened with evident interest. "That's exactly what I mean. Willowbrook has something authentic. Many villages feel preserved for tourists, but this place feels lived in, cared for. Like people actually maintain traditions because they matter, not just for show." "That's a perceptive observation," Clara said, "and accurate. We do try to maintain what matters." They talked for another half hour. Sarah was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in the village and its history. She asked good questions about local landmarks, about the best times of day for light, about the rhythms of village life. Before she left, Clara suggested she speak with Beatrice at the library. "She knows everything about Willowbrook's history and would love to meet you. She might even have old photographs that could inform your work." "That's a wonderful idea, thank you." Sarah gathered her things. "I have a feeling this residency is going to be very productive. There's something about this place, an atmosphere of care and continuity. That's rare." After Sarah left, Clara found herself thinking about the artist's observations. Willowbrook did have a special quality, not just the physical beauty, though that was certainly present, but something less tangible, a sense of community, of tradition valued and maintained, of people caring for each other and for the place itself. It was what had drawn Clara here, what kept her here. What made the honeyed leaf more than just a business? A few days later, Sarah became a regular presence in the village. Clara would see her set up with her easel in various locations. On the green, painting the church. By the stream, capturing the old mill. In Eleanor's garden, which Eleanor had indeed welcomed her to paint. Sarah worked quietly, absorbed in her art. But she also took time to talk with villagers, to learn their stories, to understand the place she was painting. She came to the honeyed leaf most afternoons for tea, and often stayed to chat with whoever was there. Mrs. Pembroke enjoyed discussing colour theory with her. Old Tom Fletcher told her about the village as it had been decades ago. Emma showed her the bookshop, and talked about the Charlotte Ashford discovery. Margaret discussed botanical art with her. Sarah absorbed it all, her artist's eye seeing not just the physical village, but the web of relationships and stories that made it a community. One afternoon, about 2 weeks into her residency, Sarah came into the honeyed leaf looking puzzled. "Clara, can I ask you something odd?" "Of course." Clara brought over Sarah's usual autumn spice tea. "I've been painting on the green in the mornings this week, early to catch the light, and I keep seeing something strange. Around dawn, someone walks across the green, always the same path, always at the same time. They stop at various spots, seem to be looking for something, then move on. But here's the odd part. They're dressed in old-fashioned clothing, like something from 100 years ago. Long coat, hat, the works. At first I thought it was someone in costume, but it's every morning. Same person, same routine, same old-fashioned clothes." Clara felt that familiar flutter of curiosity. "That is odd. Have you tried speaking to them?" "I called out once, but they didn't respond. Just kept walking their pattern and then disappeared around the church. It's probably nothing. Maybe someone who's just eccentric or doing some kind of historical reenactment. But it struck me as mysterious." "What time does this happen?" "Around 6:30, right as the sun is coming up. The light is beautiful then, which is why I'm out. But this figure keeps appearing in my compositions, and I can't decide if it's adding to the mystery or just distracting." Clara considered this. A figure in old-fashioned dress walking the green at dawn, following a pattern, looking for something. It did sound mysterious. "Would you mind if I joined you tomorrow morning? I'd like to see this for myself." "I'd love the company, actually. It's a bit eerie being out there alone in the pre-dawn darkness, especially with this mysterious figure appearing." The next morning, Clara rose before dawn, something she rarely did. She dressed warmly against the November cold and walked through the dark village to meet Sarah on the green. Sarah was already there, setting up her easel in the growing light. "Good morning," Sarah whispered. "They usually appear around now." They waited in the cold dawn. The sky gradually lightened from black to grey to pale gold. Birds began their morning songs. The village remained still and quiet. Then, just as Sarah had said, a figure appeared, walking from the direction of the church, crossing the green in a deliberate pattern. From this distance, Clara could see what Sarah meant. The figure wore clothing that did indeed look old-fashioned. A long coat, a hat, walking with a measured pace. They stopped at various points on the green, seemed to look down or search for something, then continued. "There," Sarah breathed. "You see? I do," Clara confirmed. She called out, "Hello, good morning." But the figure didn't respond, just continued their pattern. Clara started walking toward them, wanting a closer look. But as she approached, the figure seemed to fade somehow, becoming less distinct, and by the time Clara reached the spot where they'd been, no one was there. She looked around, confused. The figure couldn't have walked away that quickly. There was nowhere to hide on the open green, yet they were simply gone. Sarah joined her, looking equally puzzled. "That's what keeps happening. They just vanish. It's very odd." "Indeed it is," Clara agreed, her mind working through possibilities. Was it a trick of the light, someone playing a prank, or something more unusual? Back at the honeyed leaf, over a warming breakfast tea, Clara and Sarah discussed what they'd seen. "I'm a rational person," Sarah said. "I don't believe in ghosts. but I can't explain what we just saw. A person who dresses in old-fashioned clothes and appears at dawn, walks a specific pattern, seems to be searching for something and then vanishes into thin air. There must be a logical explanation, Clara said. Let me talk to Beatrice. If anyone knows about odd occurrences in Willowbrook's history, it's her. That afternoon, Clara visited the library. Beatrice listened to the story with growing interest. A figure in old clothes, walking the green at dawn, following a pattern. Beatrice repeated thoughtfully. That's quite specific. Let me look through our records. There might be something relevant. She disappeared into the archives and returned an hour later with several old documents and a photograph. I found something interesting, Beatrice said, spreading out her materials. In 1915 there was a man named William Ashford. He was Charlotte Ashford's nephew, Thomas Ashworth's great-nephew. He was a surveyor by trade. A surveyor? Clara asked. What's the connection? William was commissioned by the village council to create a detailed survey and map of the village green. They were planning some improvements and needed accurate measurements and documentation of existing features. He spent several weeks in late autumn of 1915 doing this work. He would arrive early each morning, walking a precise pattern across the green, taking measurements, making notes, marking locations. He was known for being very methodical and for wearing the same formal work clothes every day. Long coat, hat, proper surveyor's attire. Beatrice showed them the photograph. It showed a man on the village green, dressed in exactly the kind of clothes Sarah had described. He held surveying equipment and appeared to be taking measurements. That's him, Sarah said immediately. That's the figure I've been seeing. Exact same clothes, same posture, everything. But this photograph is from over 100 years ago, Clara said slowly. Yes, Beatrice agreed. William Ashford died in 1916, killed in the war. He never completed his survey. The project was abandoned when he enlisted and didn't return. There was a moment of silence as they absorbed this. So either we're seeing a ghost, Sarah said carefully, or there's some other explanation I'm not thinking of. Or, Clara suggested, someone in the village knows this story and is reenacting it. Perhaps as a memorial or tribute to William Ashford. Someone might be dressing in period clothes and walking his survey pattern. But why? Beatrice wondered. And who? I haven't heard of anyone doing this. Maybe we should ask around, Clara said. Quietly, without making it sound too strange. Someone might know something. Over the next few days, Clara carefully asked various villagers if they'd seen anyone on the green at dawn, if they knew of any William Ashford memorials or tributes, if anyone in the village was interested in historical reenactment. The answers were all negative. No one had seen anything unusual. No one knew of any tributes to William Ashford. No one was doing historical reenactments at dawn on the green. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to paint, and the figure continued to appear each morning. She began including it in her paintings, this mysterious form walking its pattern across the green. It's become part of how I see this place now, she told Clara, this sense of the past being present. History not as something dead and gone, but as something that still walks among us. It's actually rather beautiful in a way. Clara found herself thinking about this often, the past present among them. Was that not what all their discoveries this year had been about? Finding evidence of people long gone, bringing their stories back to life, continuing their work. Perhaps Willowbrook was simply a place where the boundary between past and present was thin, where history lived on not just in records and memories, but in active, visible ways. Chapter 2. Uncovering the Survey. A week later, Beatrice made another discovery. She'd been researching William Ashford more thoroughly, curious about this mysterious surveyor and his unfinished work. Clara, you need to see this, Beatrice said, arriving at the honeyed leaf with a folder. I found William Ashford's field notes, his preliminary survey records. They were misfiled in our archives. Labelled under general village documents instead of under his name. Clara opened the folder eagerly. Inside were pages of careful handwriting, measurements, sketches, observations. William Ashford had been meticulous in his work. He documented every feature of the green, every tree, every path, every landmark. But more than that, He'd noted things about the Green's history, references to medieval markers, old property boundaries, spots where significant events had occurred. "This is fascinating," Clara said, reading through the notes. He wasn't just measuring the physical space, he was documenting its history and significance. "Exactly," Beatrice agreed. "And look at this entry." She pointed to a page dated November 10th, 1915. "Observed unusual stone near northeast corner. Appears quite old, possibly medieval. Partially buried. Requires excavation to fully examine. May be historically significant. Will return to investigate further." "But there's no follow-up entry," Clara observed. "No, because a week later he enlisted, and by the following spring he was dead. He never got to investigate this stone." "And no one followed up on his notes?" "Apparently not. The survey project was forgotten in the chaos of the war and never resumed." Clara looked at the sketch William had made. It showed the location of this mysterious stone relative to other landmarks on the Green. "We could find it," she said slowly. "Based on these notes and his sketch, we could probably locate this stone he mentioned." "We could," Beatrice agreed. "Should we?" "I think William would want us to," Clara said. "He documented it because he thought it was important. He planned to investigate further. Perhaps we can finish what he started." They decided to wait until Sarah's next dawn painting session. If the mysterious figure appeared again, they could observe the pattern more carefully and see if it connected to William's notes. The next morning, Clara, Beatrice and Sarah all gathered on the Green before sunrise. They brought William's field notes and watched carefully as the dawn light grew. Right on schedule, the figure appeared. But this time, with William's sketch in hand, Clara could see something she'd missed before. The figure's path wasn't random. It followed exactly the survey pattern William had documented in his notes. And the spots where the figure stopped and looked down, they corresponded to locations William had marked as significant, including the spot where he'd noted the unusual stone. "Look," Clara whispered, pointing to the notes and then to the figure. "The figure is walking William's exact survey route, and it stops right where William noted finding that stone." They watched as the figure reached the northeast corner of the Green, stopped, looked down, seemed to examine something, then faded away as the sun broke over the horizon. After the figure vanished, the three women walked to the spot where it had stopped. According to William's sketch, this was where he'd found the unusual stone. They looked around carefully. The ground was covered in grass and fallen leaves, nothing obviously unusual. "It's here somewhere," Beatrice said. "William said it was partially buried. We might need to dig." They decided to approach the village council about excavating this spot. It would need permission, and if there was indeed something historically significant buried there, it should be done properly. Eleanor Hartwell, as a council member, was immediately interested when they explained. "William Ashford's survey notes. How fascinating. And you think he found something important here?" "He thought so," Clara said. "Important enough to plan to return and investigate, but he never got the chance." "Then let's give him that chance over a century late," Eleanor said. "I'll arrange for the council to approve a small excavation. We can use the survey notes as justification, historic preservation and all that." Permission was granted, and a few days later a small team gathered on the Green. Eleanor, Clara, Beatrice, Sarah, Margaret and Emma, along with a local archaeologist Eleanor had consulted to ensure the work was done properly. They marked out the area based on William's notes and began careful excavation. The archaeologist, Dr. James Morrison, supervised. "We'll go slowly," he said. "If there is something here, we don't want to damage it." They worked methodically, removing layers of soil. About 18 inches down, Dr. Morrison's trowel hit something solid. "There's definitely something here," he said. They cleared the soil carefully to reveal a stone. It was carved, clearly worked by human hands. As they exposed more of it, a pattern emerged. "It's a boundary marker," Dr. Morrison said excitedly. "Look at these markings. This is very old. Medieval, I'd say. 13th or 14th century." "A boundary marker?" Emma asked. "What would it mark?" "Property boundaries, jurisdictions, rights of way. In medieval times, these were very important. They defined legal limits, ownership, obligations. This one is particularly well preserved. They continued excavating until the entire stone was visible. It was about 2 feet tall, rectangular, with carved symbols and what appeared to be text in medieval script. "Can you read the inscription?" Clara asked. Dr. Morrison examined it carefully. "It will take some work. Medieval Latin, very worn. But I can make out some words. Something about common land, rights to gather, free grazing. This likely marked the village common, land that belonged to all villagers for shared use." "So this stone defined the village green as common land?" Beatrice asked. "Essentially, yes. It would have established that this space was for communal use, not private ownership. Very significant for a medieval village. And if this stone is still legally valid, which it might be, it could have implications for modern use of the green." Eleanor looked thoughtful. "There was a proposal last year to allow commercial development on part of the green. The council voted it down, but the developer said they'd revisit the issue. If this stone legally establishes the green as permanent common land, that would prevent any future development attempts. So William Ashford, in his survey over a century ago, found something that could protect the village green forever," Sarah said softly. "He knew it was significant. That's why he noted it, planned to investigate. And now we've finished his work," Clara added. "We've excavated what he found, understood its importance, and can use it to protect this space." Dr. Morrison took detailed photographs and measurements. He would have the inscription properly translated and write a full report on the stone's historical and legal significance. The stone was carefully preserved and eventually would be displayed, perhaps near the village green itself, with an explanation of its history and meaning. That evening, a small group gathered at the Honeyed Leaf to celebrate. Eleanor, Beatrice, Sarah, Margaret, Emma and Clara sat around a large table drinking spiced cider and discussing the discovery. "It's remarkable," Margaret said. "A medieval boundary stone, buried for centuries, found by William Ashford in 1915, documented but not investigated. And now, over 100 years later, properly excavated and understood." "Do you think that's why the figure appears?" Sarah wondered. William's ghost, still trying to complete his survey, still drawn to this significant find. "I don't know about ghosts," Beatrice said carefully, "but I do think Willowbrook is a place where the past remains present. Where unfinished work calls out to be completed, where important stories wait to be discovered and understood. Like Charlotte's library," Emma said. "Like the garden book," added Eleanor. "Like Thomas Ashford's festival records," Clara contributed. "All of them waiting to be found, to be honoured, to be continued. And now William's survey," Sarah concluded. "All these pieces of the past, carefully preserved by people who cared, waiting for people in the future who would care enough to search." "Speaking of which," Clara said, "Sarah, your residency is almost over. How has it been for you?" Sarah smiled. "It's been extraordinary. I came here to paint autumn landscapes, to capture light and colour, but I found so much more. I found a community that values its history, that maintains traditions, that works together to solve mysteries and preserve what matters. That's what I've been trying to capture in my paintings. Not just the physical beauty, but the spirit of this place." "Will you show us your work before you leave?" Eleanor asked. "I'd be honoured to," Sarah said. "I'm planning a small exhibition in the library's community room, if Beatrice will allow it. A kind of thank you to Willowbrook for welcoming me." "Of course," Beatrice said immediately. "We'd love to host your exhibition." Over the next week, Sarah prepared her exhibition. She'd been productive during her residency, creating dozens of paintings and sketches. She selected the best works and prepared them for display, along with notes about each piece and what had inspired it. The exhibition opened on a Friday evening in late November. The library's community room was packed. Villagers came to see how Sarah had portrayed their home, curious about an outsider's perspective. The paintings were beautiful. Sarah had captured Willowbrook in all its late autumn glory, the bare trees creating delicate patterns against the sky, the muted colours of November, the quality of light at different times of day. But more than that, she'd captured something intangible, a sense of place, of community, of history living alongside the present. One painting in particular drew attention. It showed the village green at dawn, bathed in pale golden light. And there, walking across the green, barely visible but definitely present, was the mysterious figure. William Ashford, walking his eternal survey pattern. "I call this one the Surveyor," Sarah explained. "It represents how the past continues to inform the present in Willowbrook, how history isn't dead but actively shapes this place. That figure appears in several of my paintings, always in the background, always following his pattern. A reminder that we stand on ground shaped by those who came before us." Another painting showed the honeyed leaf at twilight, warm light glowing from its windows, inviting passers-by in from the cold. "The Haven," Sarah had titled it. "This tea shop represents what Willowbrook offers, a space of welcome, warmth, community, where people gather and stories are shared, where traditions are maintained and mysteries are solved. It's the heart of the village in many ways." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Sarah had understood what the honeyed leaf meant, what Clara had been trying to create. Other paintings showed Eleanor's garden, the library, the church, the old mill. Each one captured not just the physical space, but its significance, its role in village life. Sarah had painted people too. Mrs. Pembroke knitting on a bench, old Tom Fletcher feeding ducks by the stream, Emma in her bookshop surrounded by books, Margaret examining plants, Beatrice shelving books, Eleanor tending her garden, Clara serving tea. Each portrait showed not just a person, but their essence, their connection to the village, their role in the community. The exhibition was a profound success. People stood before the paintings for long minutes, seeing their village through new eyes, appreciating what they had, understanding how Sarah's outsider perspective had captured something essential about Willowbrook. Before Sarah left at the end of her residency, she gave Clara a gift, a small painting of the honeyed leaf, beautifully framed. "I want you to have this," Sarah said, "as thanks for making me feel so welcome, and as a reminder of what you've created here. This shop is more than a business. It's a refuge, a gathering place, a space where community happens. That's precious." Clara hung the painting in a prominent spot in the shop. It served as a reminder of Sarah's residency, of the mystery of William Ashford, of all the discoveries they'd made. Chapter 3. Winter Approaches. After Sarah left, December arrived with the first snow. Clara woke one morning to find Willowbrook transformed into a winter wonderland. Every surface was covered in white, and the village looked like something from a Christmas card. The pace of life slowed even more. People hurried less, gathered more. The honeyed leaf became even more of a refuge. A warm place to escape the cold, to drink hot tea, to chat with neighbours. Clara loved these quiet winter days. The shop felt especially cosy with snow outside and firelight within. One afternoon, Mrs. Pembroke came in looking thoughtful. "Clara, dear, I've been thinking about William Ashford, about how he never got to finish his work, never got to see what he'd found. It seems sad somehow." "It is," Clara agreed. "But we've finished it for him. We've completed his survey, excavated his finding, understood its significance. Perhaps that's enough." "Perhaps," Mrs. Pembroke said. "But I was thinking, there should be something more. A memorial of some kind. To William, yes, but also to all the people whose work we've discovered this year. All these people who preserved knowledge, who created value, who left legacies. They deserve to be remembered together, to be honoured as a group." It was an interesting idea. Clara thought about all the discoveries of the past year. Agnes Hartwell's garden book, Catherine Thornbury's journals, Charlotte Ashford's library, Eleanor Ashworth's friendship with the owl, James Winter's Willow Tea Room, Dorothy Fletcher's Courage, Thomas Ashworth's festival, and now William Ashford's survey. So many people, working quietly across generations, creating things that lasted. "What kind of memorial did you have in mind?" Clara asked. "I'm not sure exactly. Perhaps a plaque, or a garden, something that acknowledges their contributions, something that says, 'We remember, we value what you did, we're continuing your work.'" Clara brought the idea to the regular gathering of her friends. Eleanor, Beatrice, Sophie, Emma and Margaret All thought it was wonderful. They began planning. "It should be on the village green," Eleanor said. "That's the heart of the village, and it's where William's stone was found." "A memorial garden," Margaret suggested. "Small but beautiful, with plantings that represent each person. Herbs for Agnes and Catherine and Mary. Books for Charlotte, something representing each legacy. And a central plaque," Beatrice added, "with all their names and brief descriptions of what they contributed, so people will know who they were and why they mattered." The proposal was brought to the village council, which approved it enthusiastically. The memorial would be created in the spring, when planting could begin. But the planning could start now. They researched each person carefully, crafting descriptions that captured their contributions. Agnes Hartwell and her garden remedies, Catherine Thornbury's botanical knowledge, Mary Henderson's dedication to preserving and extending that knowledge, Charlotte Ashford's secret library of women's writings, Eleanor Ashworth's natural history work and her friendship with the owl, James Winter's creation of a refuge during wartime, Dorothy Fletcher's courage in choosing her own path, Thomas Ashworth's festival and the gratitude tradition, William Ashford's careful survey work and important discovery. Each description honoured what they'd done, explained why it mattered, connected them to Willowbrook's ongoing story. As Christmas approached, Clara found herself reflecting on the year that had passed. It had been a year of discoveries, each one revealing another layer of Willowbrook's history, another person whose work had mattered, another tradition worth continuing. And through it all, she'd learned about legacy, about how the work we do ripples forward through time, about how small acts of care compound into something significant, about how communities are built and maintained through countless individual contributions across generations. On Christmas Eve, the Honeyed Leaf hosted a small gathering. The friends who'd been part of all the discoveries came together. Eleanor, Beatrice, Sophie, Emma, Margaret, and old Tom Fletcher, representing his Aunt Dorothy's courage. They drank tea and hot cider, shared memories of the year, talked about the memorial they would create. "We've had quite a year," Eleanor said. "From the garden book in spring to William's survey in autumn. So many stories uncovered, so many people remembered." "And next year?" Emma asked. "What mysteries will we find next year?" "Whatever they are," Clara said, "we'll find them together. That's what we do in Willowbrook. We search for what's been lost. We preserve what matters. We continue the work of those who came before. And we do it as a community." "That's the real legacy," Beatrice added. "Not any single discovery, but the ongoing commitment to valuing history, maintaining traditions, caring for our community. That's what all these people we've discovered had in common. They cared. They did the work. They trusted the future." "And we're proving them right to trust," Margaret said. "We found what they preserved. We understood its value. We're continuing their work. That's exactly what they hoped for." As the gathering wound down and people prepared to head home for Christmas, Clara stood at the window of the Honeyed Leaf, looking out at the snow-covered village green. In the spring, there would be a memorial garden there, a place honouring all the people whose work they'd discovered, whose legacies they were continuing. It would be beautiful, she knew. Not grand or imposing, but meaningful. A quiet acknowledgement that the work of building and maintaining community mattered across all generations. She thought about Sarah's painting on her wall, the honeyed leaf as a haven, a heart of the village. That's what Clara had wanted to create when she'd left London to open this shop, a space of welcome and warmth. But it had become more than that. It had become a gathering place for people who cared about history, who solved mysteries together, who maintained traditions. It had become part of Willowbrook's ongoing story, and Clara was grateful beyond words. Grateful for this village that had welcomed her, grateful for the friends she'd made, grateful for the mysteries they'd solved, grateful for the opportunity to be part of something larger than herself. Marmalade meowed from his cushion, reminding Clara that it was late and he had expectations about his evening routine. Clara laughed and locked up the shop, heading upstairs to her cosy flat. Tomorrow was Christmas, a day of rest and celebration. Then the shop would reopen, life would continue, and the daily work would go on. Serving tea, fostering community, being part of Willowbrook's story. She couldn't imagine anything better. Chapter 4. The Memorial Garden. Winter passed slowly and peacefully. January brought deep snow and short days. February brought ice, and the first hints that winter wouldn't last forever. March arrived with that particular mix of cold and warmth that signalled spring's approach. And with March came time to begin work on the Memorial Garden. Eleanor took charge of the planting design. She'd spent the winter sketching plans, choosing plants that would represent each person being honoured while creating a cohesive, beautiful whole. Herbs for the gardeners, she explained, showing her plans to the group. Chamomile, lavender, rosemary, lemon balm, all plants that Agnes and Catherine grew. Climbing roses for Mary Henderson, who loved them. Books carved in stone among the plantings for Charlotte. A small owl sculpture for Eleanor Ashworth. Tea plants if we can make them survive the climate, or at least representations of tea for James Winters. Wildflowers for Dorothy's wild courage, autumn blooming flowers for Thomas. And a surveyor's marker stone for William, pointing to where his medieval stone was found. The design was beautiful. A circular garden, perhaps 20 feet across, with a central paved area where the memorial plaque would stand. Radiating beds containing the various plantings, each labelled with small brass markers identifying who they honoured. Paths between the beds allowing visitors to walk through and read the descriptions. Benches for sitting and contemplation. "It will be a place of peace," Eleanor said. "A place to remember, to reflect, to understand that we're all part of an ongoing story." Work began in early April. Volunteers came to help with the heavy labour of preparing the ground. Old Tom Fletcher, despite his age, insisted on helping. "My Aunt Dorothy is part of this," he said. "I want to contribute." Many villagers pitched in, even those who didn't know all the stories. The Memorial Garden became a community project, everyone working together to create something meaningful. Clara provided tea and refreshments for the workers, setting up a small station on the green. She served her spring blends now, lighter and brighter to match the season. Workers would take breaks, drink tea, chat about what they were creating and why it mattered. The camaraderie reminded Clara of the autumn festival, that same sense of community working together. As the garden took shape, it became clear it was going to be special. Eleanor's design was being realised beautifully. The beds were prepared and planted, the paths were laid, the benches were installed, the small brass markers were placed, each one telling a story. Agnes Hartwell, 1850 to 1928, herbalist and healer, whose garden remedies brought comfort to generations. Catherine Thornbury, 1865 to 1945, botanist and gardener, who preserved and extended herbal knowledge through careful observation and record-keeping. Mary Henderson, 1878 to 1968, master gardener who carried forward traditional knowledge and made it her own. Charlotte Ashford, 1855 to 1897, advocate for women's education, who created a secret library of knowledge and hope. Eleanor Ashworth, 1855 to 1923, naturalist and benefactor, who studied the natural world with care and gave our village its library. James Winters, 1893 to 1959, tea room proprietor who created refuge during wartime and showed the power of quiet kindness. Dorothy Fletcher, 1920 to 2002, woman of courage who chose her own path and inspired others to do the same. Thomas Ashworth, 1848 to 1903, festival master who understood that celebration and gratitude build community. William Ashford, 1888 to 1916, surveyor whose careful work preserved knowledge of our village's history and protected our common spaces. Each marker told a small story. Each one honoured work that had mattered. Together, they created a narrative of community care across generations. The central plaque was installed last. It was bronze, beautifully crafted, mounted on a standing stone. The inscription read simply, "In honour of those who came before, who preserved knowledge, created beauty, maintained traditions, and built community through countless small acts of care. Their work continues in us. May we be as faithful to the future as they were. Willowbrook remembers. Willowbrook continues." The garden was officially opened on a beautiful May afternoon. The entire village turned out for the ceremony. The mayor gave a brief speech about the importance of honouring history and maintaining traditions. Eleanor explained the garden's design and symbolism. Beatrice read brief biographies of each person being honoured, but the most moving moment came when old Tom Fletcher spoke about his Aunt Dorothy. "She was brave," he said simply. Not in dramatic ways, but in the daily choice to be herself, to follow her own path despite pressure to conform. "She taught me that quiet courage matters as much as grand gestures. I'm glad she's remembered here." After the formal ceremony, people wandered through the garden, reading the markers, admiring the plants, sitting on the benches. Children ran between the paths, parents explaining who these people were and why they mattered. "This is wonderful," Mrs. Pembroke said to Clara. "It's exactly what I hoped for. A place that says, we remember, we value what you did." And look how people are responding. They're engaged, interested, understanding that they're part of this same ongoing story. Clara agreed. The garden was more than just a memorial. It was a reminder that the work of building community mattered, that small acts of care accumulated into something significant, that what we do ripples forward through time. In the weeks that followed, the memorial garden became a beloved part of the village. People would stop there during walks, sit on the benches, read the markers. School groups visited to learn about local history. The garden club maintained the plantings, ensuring everything stayed beautiful. And occasionally, early in the morning when the light was just right, people reported seeing a figure walking across the green. Always following the same pattern, always stopping at the same spots. William Ashford, still walking his survey, perhaps satisfied now that his work had been completed and honoured. Chapter 5. Continuing forward. As spring progressed into early summer, Clara found herself reflecting on everything that had happened since she'd arrived in Willowbrook. It had been more than a year now. A year of discoveries, of mysteries solved, of traditions maintained and revived, of community built and strengthened. She'd learned so much. About the village, yes, but more importantly about what mattered. About legacy and continuity. About the importance of preserving what's valuable. About how small acts of care build into something meaningful over time. About community and connection and the work of maintaining both. The honeyed leaf had become exactly what she'd hoped for when she'd first opened it. A gathering place, a refuge, a space where people felt welcome and valued. But it had also become something more. A headquarters for mystery solving, a place where history was discussed and honoured, a centre for the work of maintaining Willowbrook's traditions. One June morning, as Clara was preparing for the day, she received an unexpected letter. It was from Sarah Chen, the artist who'd spent her residency in Willowbrook the previous autumn. "Dear Clara," the letter began, "I hope this finds you well and the honeyed leaf thriving. I wanted to let you know that my paintings of Willowbrook are being exhibited in London. They've attracted quite a bit of attention. People are drawn to what you and your village represent, the sense of community, the respect for tradition, the care for history. In a fast-paced modern world, Willowbrook represents something people are hungry for: connection, continuity, meaning. Several other artists have asked me about the village. They're interested in applying for future residencies. I've told the council that Willowbrook has something special to offer, a chance not just to paint pretty landscapes, but to experience a community that truly values what matters. Thank you for making my residency so meaningful. I hope to return someday. With warm regards, Sarah." Clara shared the letter with her friends that afternoon. They gathered at the honeyed leaf, as they so often did, to discuss this new development. "More artists wanting to visit Willowbrook," Eleanor said thoughtfully. "That could be wonderful. Fresh perspectives, new interpretations of our village. As long as they come with the right spirit," Beatrice added, "the way Sarah did. Respectful, interested in understanding rather than just observing, willing to engage with the community. I think if we're careful about who we accept, it could be very positive," Margaret said. "Artists who are drawn to what Sarah captured in her work will likely be the right fit." "And it's a way of sharing what we've built here," Emma suggested. "Through art, through their eyes, other people can understand what makes Willowbrook special. Maybe they'll be inspired to create similar communities where they live." The conversation continued, ranging over various topics. Plans for the summer, ideas for maintaining the memorial garden, thoughts about what mysteries might still wait to be discovered. "I wonder if we've found everything," Sophie mused, "or if there are more stories still hidden, waiting for us to uncover them." "I'm certain there are more," Eleanor said. "Willowbrook has centuries of history. We've barely scratched the surface. There are more people whose work deserves to be remembered, more traditions that could be revived, more knowledge that's been preserved and waits to be found." "That's exciting," Clara said. "Knowing that there's always more to discover, more ways to connect with the past, more opportunities to honour those who came before and continue their work." As summer settled over Willowbrook, life took on its warm weather rhythms. The honeyed leaf served iced teas now, refreshing blends perfect for hot days. The memorial garden bloomed beautifully, each plant healthy and thriving. The village green was busy with children playing, families picnicking, people enjoying the long evenings. And occasionally, in the early morning or late evening when the light slanted golden across the green, someone would glimpse a figure walking a careful pattern. William Ashford, eternally dedicated to his survey. A reminder that the past never truly leaves us, that the work of those who came before continues to shape the present. Clara had become fully part of Willowbrook now. Not a newcomer anymore, but a true member of the community. Someone who understood its rhythms, valued its traditions, contributed to its ongoing story. The honeyed leaf was her contribution, her way of maintaining what James Winters had started with the Willow Tea Room. A space of refuge and community, a gathering place, a spot where people felt welcome and valued, where tea was served with care and conversation was encouraged, where mysteries were discussed and traditions were maintained. One warm June evening, as Clara was closing up the shop, Mrs. Pembroke stopped by. "I just wanted to say thank you, dear," she said, "for everything you've brought to Willowbrook, for creating this lovely shop, yes, but more than that, for caring about our history, for helping us discover and honour the people who built this community, for being part of continuing their work." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm the one who should be thanking you," she said. "All of you. You welcomed me, included me, gave me purpose. You taught me what community really means. I'm grateful every day that I found my way to Willowbrook." After Mrs. Pembroke left, Clara stood at the window one last time, looking out at the village in the summer evening light. The green was empty now, peaceful, the memorial garden visible at its edge. The church stood solid and ancient. The houses glowed with warm light from windows. Somewhere in the village, Eleanor was tending her garden. Beatrice was shelving books at the library. Emma was closing up the bookshop. Margaret was working on her research. Sophie was planning educational programs. Old Tom was feeding his evening tea to his cat, remembering his brave Aunt Dorothy. All of them part of Willowbrook's ongoing story. All of them maintaining traditions, creating value, caring for the community. All of them linked to those who'd come before and to those who would come after. Clara locked the door and headed upstairs, Marmalade already waiting impatiently for his dinner. Tomorrow would bring another day at the honeyed leaf. More tea to brew, more customers to serve, more conversations to encourage. The daily work of maintaining a small business and a community space. Work that mattered, Clara knew now. Work that connected her to everyone who'd done similar work before her, and everyone who would do it after. Small work, perhaps, in the grand scheme of things, but meaningful work, essential work. The work of creating and maintaining spaces where people could gather, connect, feel they belonged. The work of honouring the past while building the future. The work of being part of community. As she prepared for bed, Clara thought about William Ashford one last time. A young man who'd carefully surveyed the village green, documented its features, found something significant, and then gone off to war and never returned. Never knowing that his work would matter over a century later. Never knowing that people would complete what he'd started, honour what he'd found, remember his contribution. But it didn't matter that he'd never known. The work had still mattered. The careful notes he'd made had still preserved important knowledge. His dedication had still meant something, even though he'd never seen the results. That was the lesson, Clara thought. You did the work because it was worth doing, because you could do it, because it aligned with your values, not for recognition or reward, though those were nice when they came, but because the work itself had value, because small acts of care accumulated into something larger, because what you did rippled forward through time in ways you couldn't predict or control. William Ashford had surveyed the village green with care and attention. He'd documented what he found. He'd noted something significant. And over a century later, that work had protected the green, created a memorial garden, honoured many people's contributions, and strengthened community bonds. All because he'd done his work with dedication and integrity. That was legacy. Not monuments or fame, though the memorial garden was certainly a kind of monument, but influence that rippled forward, work that mattered long after you were gone, care that accumulated into something larger than any individual contribution. Clara fell asleep peacefully, grateful for the mysteries she'd helped solve, the traditions she'd helped maintain, the community she was part of. Tomorrow would bring whatever it would bring. But tonight, all was well. All was peaceful. All was exactly as it should be in Willowbrook, where the past and present lived side by side, where traditions were valued and maintained, where mysteries waited to be discovered and stories waited to be told, where community was built through countless small acts of care, where everyone had a place and a purpose, where legacies were created not through grand gestures, but through faithful daily work. And where Clara Whitmore had found her home, her calling, her place in the ongoing story. Keeper of the honeyed leaf, solver of gentle mysteries, maintainer of traditions, member of community, link in an unbroken chain stretching back through time and forward into the future. The summer night settled peacefully over Willowbrook. Stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky. The village slept, safe and content. The memorial garden held its vigil on the green, honouring those who'd come before. The honeyed leaf stood ready to open again tomorrow, offering its welcome and warmth, and somewhere in the space between past and present, William Ashford walked his eternal survey pattern, dedicated to his work, satisfied perhaps that it had finally been completed and understood. The surveyor at rest, his task honoured, his contribution remembered. All was well in Willowbrook, where mysteries were gently solved and legacies carefully maintained, where tea was served with care and community was built with patience, where the past informed the present and the present honoured the past, where everyone worked together to create something meaningful, where small acts of care mattered deeply, where traditions lived on, not as empty rituals but as living connections to those who came before, where the work continued, generation after generation, each adding their own contribution to an ongoing story of community and care. And where Clara Whitmore served tea and solved mysteries, and was grateful every day for the life she'd found. The end.